Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelsen, professional horse trainer, and with me is my good friend, Deb Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor. And today's topic is, oh, what did I write? Hang on. Oh, yeah, horses in new places. We weren't quite sure what to call that. So horses in new places means when we buy a new horse and the horse moves into our barn, but we're a new person for the horse. Talking about taking horses on trail rides, to shows, to new locations, uh, different venues, and even sending a horse in training, what I sort of look at on that end of it. So horses in new places can be a big deal. If you've been a horse owner, you know this, that your horse
Yes.
doesn't always behave in public or new places like they do at home,
Like
just like
children.
kids. Yeah. And so the reason this topic came up is because you have a new horse at your place, right, Deb?
Right. I actually have two. And it's interesting to see the timelines that they go through. Um, and we were talking before we started the podcast. It's very interesting to me the things they go through. Do they trust me? Do they trust the location? What about the type of work they're in and their body condition? There's so many different things going on at one time that you're just not aware of.
Yeah, exactly. And there may be some elements that are the same. It may be from our horses or from the horse's perspective, it may be every aspect of life just suddenly changed.
Yes.
And from our horse's perspective, it's like, sending kids to a new school. There's an adaptation phase. There's a period of time where that horse just first needs to feel safe.
Right.
Right. And I think you mentioned something interesting, like when you took in one of the horses, maybe both of them, the diet didn't change at all. The diet was the same, but
Mm-hmm.
the location is different. The other horses this horse is encountering are different.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the schedule is different. Maybe the horse gets more turnout or less turnout. Maybe is turned out with other horses for the first time or turned out in isolation for the first time. And then the person,
Mm-hmm.
like to me, a lot of people think in order to get their horse trail worthy, they want me to ride their horse on the trail X number of times until the horse quits being scared. And I don't really find, I go, some horses, if that's the approach, is just sort of repetition of getting out there on the trails until the horse can calm down. It's a little bit of a sink or swim situation for the
Mm.
horse, hoping the horse just sort of pulls it together. But I find it's not really about the trail, it's about the person.
That's really interesting because one of the horses that came here um when the owner came to visit after the first month, she was like, "That's not my horse." I don't know whose horse that is, but that's not my horse
What
kind of
did she
thing. He
mean
was
by that?
just, you know, he was just off, airs above the ground and just not able to stay in his skin and he'd been that way since the day he got off the trailers. So, but we're 2 months down the road now and um we had two really good days in a row just this last week. So, that
It
time
took
frame.
him like 2 months to start to calm down and feel
Mhm.
safe.
Yeah, and the work obviously, well, he had been at rest completely, so he hadn't been any kind of work at all, but so that finding a routine, I think, was real important for him to understand the routine of the work and the consistency, maybe the same person, maybe. all those
Yeah.
things that add up that I don't think we think about. Or even like with another horse owner I work with, the owner's expectations or thoughts of what could happen enter into the equation.
Yeah, because we sort of expect, however our horse is in this environment, our horse should be the same in every environment.
Mm-hmm.
And even people are not that way. Our fears are triggered by different environments or different situations. We're not always our best selves in every situation. And so from the horse's perspective, this will come up a lot with people who buy a horse, especially if it's just through video or an auction, and they finally get the horse shipped into their house, and it's like the horse is terrified, not
Mm-hmm.
acting at all like what they saw on the video or
Exactly.
the horse they tried at the other location. And I'll always tell people to give the horse 3 months,
That's a good
really,
one. Yeah.
because this horse, horses feel safe based on their herd more than their location.
Okay.
So horses are nomadic wanderers, right? But they have close family units, close herd units. So if we look at what makes a horse feel safe, it's the herd members, not necessarily a familiar location, right? So horses in the wild don't stay in the same location. They don't put
Right.
themselves away at night or give themselves turnout during the day. It's like the routine of the barn is what they can learn to cope with, but the herd members are what help them feel safe. And so if you imagine a horse that's now lost its other horsey friends or horse herd
Mm-hmm.
members at one location and has changed people, right? So a
Mm-hmm.
person, if we can catch the horse, we're no longer considered a predator in the horse's mind, right? A
Okay.
horse that's hard to catch still perceives a human as a predator, and there is a natural prey-predator barrier going on inside that horse. But a horse that you can catch, halter, trailer load, sell, get from one location to the next, that's a horse that doesn't see people as predators, but sees their person or the people they're familiar with as herd members.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take away all the horse's familiar herd members, it can create a lot of fear. It's not just moving locations. What's more important is the loss of other herd members, whether it's people or actual horses, because that's
Yeah.
where instinctually they find their safety.
And that I sometimes the owner needs help with that. You know what I mean? Maybe they're not being a good herd member.
Right. Or maybe they're not prepared to help their other horse like a trusted herd
Exactly.
member in a new location. It's maybe a shock. They just expect the horse to adapt.
I totally agree. Or they expect something bad to happen.
That
So
too.
it's that whole thing in the whole thing in the Alexander community is not living in the past or the future, that just being present with what you have without the past and the future, because we don't live there. The horse doesn't live there. The horse is living in the exact now. Um,
And I
so
think
yeah,
you
I've had
just,
owners.
I was going to say, I think you just hit the nail on the head about what horses have to teach humans is
Mm,
horses force us to live in the present moment because that's where they live.
I think
And
that's why I
so,
like being around them, is because if I'm with them, I'm with them. I'm not doing the grocery list. I'm not on my QuickBooks. I'm not,
yeah,
I have to be present with them.
yeah.
And I think that's the draw for me, to be with them, because everything else melts away.
No, and in rehab work, I'll start with horses and owners where the owner is literally afraid of riding their horse or afraid of handling their
Mm-hmm.
horse. And it's very hard at that stage to imagine anything different because
Yeah,
because
yes.
that fear is overwhelming. And as we make our way through it, it's like I tell people when this horse is ready to be ridden, it will be obvious and
Mm,
you will
good point.
feel safe. You will be itching to get on this horse because it's so obvious that it's time to get on your horse. I
That is
said it,
such a good point to make.
yeah,
And it's
because
not
as
30, 60, 90 days. It's none of that. It's just a knowing of where you both are if you've both come to the place where it's going to work.
yes. And that knowing doesn't have a time frame.
Not a
It
human
doesn't,
time frame.
I should say, it doesn't have a predictable time frame.
Right.
And sometimes that means everything happens faster than we expect and it goes better. And sometimes that means it takes much longer than we thought it was going to or that we thought
Hmm.
it should. And it's like,
Right.
no, it just takes whatever time it takes. But when that horse feels safe and when that horse feels physically stable, let's say in the walk, trot, canter, maybe with the saddle and bridle on, then when we see that from the groundwork, it's obvious that we could ride that horse.
Right.
Because when we look at a horse that's calm and kind of rhythmic and steady in the walk, trot, canter, we look at that horse and go, yeah, I want to ride that horse.
Yeah.
Right. And if we don't see that and we have fear, the human perception is that we have to get over our fear and do it
Ooh,
anyways.
that's huge.
And I
That's
don't think
big.
that's very helpful to horses.
Well, no, they can feel that. It'd be like
So,
riding a deer. What? What? Oh,
exactly.
hell, what's that over there? Oh, crap.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you can ride a deer and you find it exciting, it isn't a great experience for the deer, right? So a horse
Right.
that's acting like a deer or deer in the headlights or scared or whatever, as long as the horse is in fear or feels physically unstable, I tell people, I go, even if you can ride it, should you?
Right. Should you?
Should you? Is that really the experience you want your horse to have? Is carrying a rider while they're terrified, or carrying a rider in a way that makes them feel so unstable that they can't quite get their balance or get their feet in the right place, or they feel like
Hmm.
they're going to fall over. I go, that's not a good experience
Yeah,
for the
I
horse.
I remember in my 20s, that was a no-brainer. Just get on and go.
Ride what you got.
Ride what you got.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I'm like, that just doesn't sound appealing whatsoever.
No, and I went through that for long periods in my career where I was just supposed to get on any horse as a
Right.
professional, or even before I was a professional, it was like get on, you just ride the horse you have. Like that's how I was brought up. And I had this epiphany one day, like in the middle of a, I don't know, colt starting clinic I was taking or working with like a batch of green horses all at once. And I finally, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. And I go, this horse is terrified.
Yeah.
This horse is terrified. What am I doing? Like, just because I can stick on, and that's an ego thing, right? It's an ego thing
I
that I can
completely
be this
agree.
great rider that can ride through a buck, a bolt, a rear, or whatever. But it suddenly hit me in my heart going, what am I doing to this horse?
Hmm.
Like, there's got to be a better way than just expecting every horse is going to be terrified to be ridden and you just have to get through it until they're calm. And so I
Wow.
go, there's actually a lot of alternatives to that.
Hmm.
And so a horse feeling safe is always a safer horse to either be around or be on. And that shows also if a horse feels safe, with a rider or in a new environment, then they're going to be calm. So
Right.
a calm energy in a horse tells me they feel safe and vice versa. So, like you said, if the horse got off the trailer and spent 2 months being tense or anxious or anything but calm, that horse is full of fear.
Right. And the fear can come out in ways, what he was doing was rearing and kicking out. And, people would think that that's aggression, but not to me. That's like,
That's just,
I'm uncomfortable. The bottom line, I'm just uncomfortable with everything right now.
yeah. And so we can put that on like a scale going, a horse in fear, what you're describing is an extreme level of fear. But
Right.
we can have a moderate level of fear where maybe we get stepped on rather than kicked, or we could have a mild version of fear where the horse is
Mhm.
just really distracted, uncooperative, blah, 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 all the things we complain about.
I I
But I
think
go,
that's a good point because we don't notice anything except the big stuff.
I know.
That little stuff,
Welcome to my world. Yes.
that little stuff you're talking about, to me, is like it's key. If they don't have their attention on me, if they're distracted and ear, not on me, there's a problem.
Well, it can escalate from mild to moderate to severe pretty quick.
Yeah. And I
So,
don't think people tune into that with their horse before it escalates too high until they notice it way up here where there's an explosion instead of way back here where you could have done something a little different.
yeah. Yeah. And that I think guides us in the direction of what we call horse whispering, that it's normal for humans, especially when we're new to horses, that we don't notice anything about their energy, their body
Mm,
language, their behavior, their mental focus, or their emotional state until they buck
mhm.
us off, or bolt, or rear, or blow up, or kick, or have a meltdown. Then we notice, right?
Right,
But that's the horse screaming at us because we missed the earlier signs.
right.
And I always smile on the inside without judgment, but smile on the inside when somebody says, my horse
All of a sudden,
all of a sudden did something dangerous. And I go,
right.
it's if we really tune in, even though it's rapid, there's usually a warning sign or two
Mhm.
that we could maybe redirect that energy or redirect that thought towards something safer rather than letting that sense of fear just escalate on its own.
Or be the stupid human and push them into it further. It's kind of
Well, then you better be ready to ride
yeah.
what they give you. If
Be
you're
the
gonna,
one that
yeah,
pushes them towards that plastic bag that they're spooking at kind of
yeah,
concept.
yeah.
And that's really hard for us humans to not do, It's
Well,
like, what's the matter with you?
I go, look, nothing wrong with that. But if that's your choice, if you're going to contribute to the horse's fear, then don't complain when you have to ride something extreme, right?
Right,
Or if the horse rockets you off of their back or runs you over, that's them protecting themselves. It has nothing to do with you. It's not the
right,
horse being bad, it's the horse trying to save its own bacon. And so, of course, they're going to do something extreme if the fear escalates to that level, because we would too,
right.
right? We would too in that state of fear. And so, anytime we're trying to not show the horse we're afraid or push our horse through fear or flood our horse. It's actually a
Mm,
training technique called flooding or sacking
really?
out
Sacking
or
out. Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
yeah, flooding, sacking out, even, you know, I think in Pirellis they even called it the friendly game, which is like sacking out, flooding, basically, where you just and a lot of these desensitization clinics are based on that, where you're literally flooding your horse with so many fearful objects or unknown objects that they finally just go, okay, I'm alive. I guess I'm okay. But
So do
you
you
have
think
to
they
go,
shut down?
well, some of them will shut down and
Yeah.
others will get over it. But it's the same with people. And I go, look, if you're afraid of snakes, why don't we start with a room full of snakes and let's help you get over that, right? Or like the Indiana Jones movie, let's drop you into a pit of snakes and see
There
how
you
well
go.
you, yeah. And so if we're contributing, if we're not actively helping our horse feel safe, then we're just leaving it up to our horse to figure it out. And so, like a horse that
Mm,
comes in training, knowing that this horse no longer has familiar herd members, has to adapt to a new barn, and I'm kind of on a time frame to get
mhm,
things accomplished, right?
mhm,
So, knowing all of that happens, the more scared the horse is, the earlier I start spending time with the horse in air quotes work time, but the work is primarily geared towards bonding and calming the energy.
mhm,
So all of the stuff I teach about the learning frame of mind, like my first job is to help a new horse that just came in training really shift into that dominance of the parasympathetic nervous system as rapidly as possible. So I'm going to give that horse a lot more attention the first week. I'm going to spend more time with that horse. I'm going to plan part of the training time is slowly working through the barn routine. So I'm not going to assume just because that horse has been led around the last barn that this
mhm.
horse will be safe to lead, safe in turnout, safe in the stall, all of those
That's a really
things.
good point. Really good point. Yeah.
All of those things have to be actively managed if the horse has a high level of fear. And by
Yeah.
actively managed, what I mean is become the trusted herd member as fast as possible, helping the horse feel safe, helping the horse calm down. Because until I achieve that, I can't really work on the physical balance as long as the horse is in a state of fear.
Right.
And that was part of my epiphany. I go, that's why some of these horses, even though they've had 90 days of training or multiple bouts with the trainer for weeks at a time, they come home and feel untrained for the owner
Mhm.
for two reasons. One, the owner doesn't know what to do that the trainer does know what to do. And two, the horse went through training in a state of fear. So any
Right.
horse, like if I teach a horse to walk, trot, canter, but they never really feel safe doing so, then walk, trot, canter is now associated with fear,
Wow. And
right?
I
And
think that happens with people because, and I can attest to it myself with my big mare because she was always airs above the ground. And is that always my expectation of what's going to happen?
we can lock our horses into it.
Yeah. Am I
Absolutely.
setting my horse up for success or failure with my own preconceived ideas of what could happen?
Right. So in that very situation, because the longer one human owns one horse, the more that sort of intertwining of experience and habits in the nervous system is strengthened. And so sometimes I come in like a marriage counselor and go, okay, a relationship counselor, right? Going, here's what your horse is saying to you. Now, how do you respond to that,
Good point.
right? Because
Or a
how,
lot of owners I'm running into board their horses. So they're not involved in the day to day in and out,
right?
of that kind of stuff. So even working with owners just doing that, they learn quite a bit.
Yes. If you're not the actual caretaker of your horse,
Mm-hmm.
you still have to spend quote unquote training time or time at the barn where you're building that relationship of trust, which really comes out of doing non-demanding work.
I like that idea.
Like the horse loves the groom because the groom isn't asking the horse to do
Right.
anything, but is giving the horse food, a clean stall, getting them from point A to point
Yay.
B, making them feel good by just grooming and putting them away, and all of those things. That's why so many horses love their grooms
Right.
because it's non-demanding time, right? And grooms get to know the horses, right? And even we could say grooms could be barn workers, barn helpers, barn managers, staff, all of that. But when we spend non-demanding day-to-day barn function time with our horse, we learn about them and they learn about us.
And
And
hopefully it's in a comfortable, even setting, like you said, that non-demanding time is critical. It's kind of like sitting on the front porch drinking an iced tea in a rocking chair with your friend.
yeah, it's why you and I started the podcast because we
Yeah,
is talking to each other.
we missed each other.
Yeah,
And my horses are that way. Granted, I've had them since they were babies and then they're 20s now, but they're like, "Hi, Mom. So good to see you."
yeah,
And the new horses are like, "What the heck is going on?"
yes, yes. And that's
And
because
even my horses look over at the new horses going, "What's the matter with you? Just calm down. It's okay."
so those when we run a barn, well, as a training barn, I always have a core group of horses that live at my barn,
Right.
right? And those horses, because of my relationship of trust with them, because we're all herd members, if a new horse comes in that's really scared, part of getting that horse settled are my anchor horses, the horses that
Mhm.
aren't going to react to the new horse's fear. And
Yeah,
so
and I see that. Yeah,
if
that's a definite.
yeah, if the new horse loses their mind, the other horses look up from their hay and go, "What's that all about?" But
Yeah, what's up with you?
they don't start running and
No,
joining the
mine don't run at
chaos.
all. They're like, "I'm fine."
Yeah. And that's a huge part of establishing a safe environment when you have horses coming and going at your barn is the routine, the predictability, but also these other horses that feel so safe with you or at their home that they just don't join in the big reaction game
Right.
when a new horse comes in. And if we don't have that, if we have one horse and we're going to different barns and different locations, then our horse is entirely dependent on us as the known herd member. So
Mm.
if we've taken the time to establish that relationship through non-demanding time and work time that makes our horse physically feel better, not worse.
Yes.
That's where
Yes.
understanding body mechanics and understanding balance really comes in.
I agree.
But then I can take that horse that trusts me and do anything we've ever worked on together in a completely new location, and my horse will adapt very quickly. So if I go to a show and I do a little groundwork, it takes 5 or 10 minutes for the horse to go, okay, you're here. We do the same thing. It's just the place is new. I'm good.
And I
Right.
just had that, I shared with you before we started. I just had that experience with the horse and owner I've been working with for a year now. She just moved him to a new location, and I was there within 24 hours and worked with him in a brand new setting, new arena with obstacles, which he's never seen before. he was like, I'm good. You're here. We're good. We're doing the same thing we did at the other place. A new place doesn't matter.
Yes, that's how quickly they can adapt. But if we're sort of relying on our horse to figure it out, you got a 50-50 shot whether your horse is going to be rideable at that new place or not because we're leaving it up to the horse, right?
That's a good point. So are you saying pretty much our relationship in the herd as a leader is, important?
Yeah, and I don't
Or
really
maybe a definition of leader is not a good word. I don't know what.
I don't like the whole horse leadership thing.
Right, right,
Because in a horse herd, the leadership role is interchangeable.
right.
It's more like a board of directors.
Okay. Wow, that
So
works.
a horse herd has a board of directors that is a collaborative to protect the herd, the safety of the herd. It's interchangeable, but to get on the board of directors, you have to be a trusted herd member, which
Hmm.
means you've proven yourself to the other horses that number one, you know about energy, you read energy, you react to energy rather than behavior. And two, that you understand the language of space, that
Mm,
distance and space and personal space
mm,
bubbles and all of that is the language that horses speak. So the language horses speak is energy and space and how we work with energy and space to direct motion or cause another horse not to move, blocking space, opening space, directing motion, and telling other horses where to go, whether you're leading or pushing. So that
yeah.
whole nonverbal language, if we don't even understand it, then the horse, if they love us and we're in the herd, we still haven't graduated to the board of directors type of trusted herd member. We're tolerated, but we don't
We're
really have to be
tolerated.
listened to.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And you brought
And
up a
we
really
know.
good point about that is we don't realize, say if we're doing something simple as lunging, we don't realize that our where we are with our body influences the horse's movement.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
mhm.
amazing to me how people will get ahead of the horse and they don't realize that they're blocking
You're,
space.
well, you're in the middle of a circle because you can't move very much without shifting your relative alignment to the horse's
Right,
body. And we
right.
forget that when we're on the inside of a circle or the inside of a turn, that we have to go slower in order to maintain a consistent alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
we
see
do
that
it.
all the time.
Yeah, we do it in the saddle too. Like the horse that goes too slow doesn't have forward energy. The rider tends to really get ahead of the
Hmm.
motion energetically. And a horse that won't slow down, we tend to try to pull back and we get behind the motion where the most stable place for us and the place that creates harmony with the motion, whether it's slow or fast, is to be right in the middle of it.
Hmm.
So if the fast horse goes fast, you go, okay, I'm go fast too. And if the slow horse goes slow, you go, okay, I can go slow too. So at least
Right.
you're moving in harmony. And that kind of energy and space relationship is what it's the language horses speak. So it's a huge way to build trust and bond just by how we use personal space and energy. And without knowing that, I think that, we can prove that we're not a threat to a horse, but sometimes we're frustrated because the horse reacts to the environment
Hmm.
rather than taking our guidance. And if we've earned the position or we've gotten on the board of directors as a trusted herd member, then I know that horse will be safe to start taking out on the trails because that horse looks to me when safety is questioned.
Exactly.
And my direction has proven consistently to that horse that I will always guide us both towards safety. I will never push you into feeling more unsafe. The environment may trigger the horse, but I don't want to be the trigger. I want to be the solution,
Right.
right? And the more often I prove that I can help my horse feel safe and calm, that kind of trust is what you carry with you everywhere you go. So the environment and what's going on around you matters less and less
Mhm.
because the horse knows this herd member has got my back no matter where we go. This herd member is on the ball, knows how to speak my language, knows what I need when I need it. And so I can cope with all of these other unknown factors because my herd member is so trusted.
Yeah.
And that is a that is a 180 from how we think about desensitizing horses in order to make them feel safe.
Yeah.
It's a total
I
huge
agree.
paradigm shift to think if my horse won't listen to me in a moment of crisis, it's probably because my horse hasn't really voted me onto the board of directors yet, right? I'm tolerated, I'm a herd member, but I'm not a provider of safety and security.
Right. And like you were saying at the beginning, this takes months of continuous work. This is not just show up, I'm the human and I'm the leader and everything's fine. It doesn't work that way for them.
Yeah, even if you paid for them,
Yeah.
even if you bought them.
Paid a lot for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That we have to realize that when we walk into their world.
Yeah, and if we don't learn to see the world through our horse's eyes, it's the predator-prey relationship is not an easy one.
Mm-mm.
So we're instinctually going to do all the wrong things, and our horse is instinctually going to do all the wrong things from our perspective. So we call horses stupid, disobedient, lazy,
Mhm.
hates work, blah, blah, blah. When really that is the communication from our horse telling us that there's an issue in our herd dynamic, in our
And
relationship.
it's and I'm noticing, and let me know what your thoughts are on this, that um basic handling is, like you said, that quiet time of not asking anything seems to have shortened
That's
for the
why
horse.
I wrote a whole
I know.
book called Basic Handling for
Yes.
that reason,
And it's
where
out there, right? Where's it
it's
available?
only available on my website. The website link is in the information box
Oh,
with this
goody.
video. And I actually was looking at self-publishing. I didn't self-publish. I haven't published it. So it's just a downloadable PDF that you can get only on my website at kirstennelsen.com, which is hard to spell. So look up the link.
But
Easy to
but I'm
misspell, I should
noticing
say.
that's what's missing, is that quality time of just basic things like don't move your feet.
So the basic handling workbook developed out of, I think it was 8 or 9 years where I volunteered a
Ah,
lot for horse rescue organizations. And it became very apparent very fast that a lot of the volunteers lacked horse experience, but we were having to handle horses that were either behaviorally really tricky or physically very compromised or had been, the horse rescues, one of them specialized in the abandoned, abused, and neglected horses.
wow.
And the other horse rescue I worked with was strictly off the track thoroughbreds. And between those two rescues, we had volunteers that might be very good horse people, might even have a lot of experience, but didn't have experience with either racing thoroughbreds, right, which is a professional level of experience, or horses that might be difficult because of abuse or abandonment or neglect. And so these were, and this is kind of the problem across the board with horse rescues,
Mhm.
is the people who volunteer And the people who adopt these horses have huge hearts, but
Mhm.
often not a lot of horse experience because
Right.
the people who should be adopting these horses, they know how much work it's going to be. They know
Exactly.
they know how hard it's going to be. And so you don't get experienced horses people searching for horses at horse rescues. So the whole basic handling workbook was for training volunteers to
Mm.
work with difficult horse. Well, I don't like the word difficult, but to work with horses that were highly defensive for whatever reason, either the extreme of aggression or flight, pulling ropes out of hands, can be
Mhm.
put in turnout, that kind of thing. And it's actually really beautiful to me to watch a human and a horse develop together. It's
Mhm.
a slow process. There's a lot
Yes.
of safety precautions, but to watch that horse just let the cobwebs of defensiveness get
Mhm.
peeled back and let their personality shine through. And I think for people, there's something incredibly healing about for us when we help a horse heal. And I just think it's just beautiful how it wakes up the best part of people and the best part of horses. And so that whole basic handling workbook and the groundwork workbook were really developed around that idea of a person who doesn't easily understand horses, which is not natural to us, but has to work with a horse that's not that easy or safe to work with.
Yeah.
And we were very successful at both rescues. Right. So at the off the track thoroughbred rescue, I started working with the volunteers and the horses because they were having to ace every
Oh.
horse just to
Mhm.
get from the stall to the big pasture or from the pasture back to the stall. They're having to tranquilize these off the track thoroughbreds. Right. And at the other horse rescue with the abused, abandoned, and neglected horses, our adoption rate went way up. And a lot of people, the volunteers who happened to be doing some of the work with the horses, would end up adopting these horses because they just bonded with
Mhm.
them so closely. And so it was really successful. And the workbook is out there. It's the place to start if we don't know a lot and our horse is a little bit unsafe. It's also exactly what I do for all the
Mhm.
horses that are new to my barn. I go because I'm not asking them to walk, trot, canter, or be ridden, maybe for the
Right.
first week, but we need to be safe with my barn staff handling them, with me handling them. They need to be safe when they're turned out so they don't run through a fence or a gate or something like that. So all of that is exactly how I go through the process of quote unquote working with the horse until they feel safe enough with me and trust me enough that I can start working on the physical balance issues or develop better coordination in the movement. Because I can't do that if fear is dominating the body.
Right.
We might think we can, and we can get some pretty flashy movement when a horse is afraid. We can get fast, we can get flashy and exciting, but we can't get correct. We
Correct.
can't we
Yeah.
we can't get mechanically correct movement as long as there's fear.
And I think that, that spending time with them without demanding anything needs to have more credit, needs to be practiced more, and just, hanging around with them, grooming, all of that instead of, oh, I've only got an hour. Let's get out there and jump kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah. Chop chop. Yes.
Chop, chop.
No, and if
Yeah.
we watch even domestic horses in small herds, what we'll see is the calmest herd member, not the one that's riling everybody else up, right? It's usually the horse that isn't overreacting is the leader of the herd, and the other horses will gravitate towards that horse that's sort of the calmest and seems to have a plan rather than a big reaction. And you know that two horses are on the same board of directors in that trusted relationship
Mm.
when they groom each other. Like I have two geldings I turn out together, and before they even go out to graze, they spend 5 to 10 minutes grooming each other.
Yeah,
It's so cute. And then when they graze, like it's the horses that graze nose to nose, side by side, they just hang out.
right,
Like that's how they bond and trust each other is hangout time, mutual grooming, right? Swishing flies off each other, that
right.
kind of thing. And so that's what we have to simulate as humans if we want to earn that trusted position within the herd. So if we're always like, you do this and you do that, and don't go here and don't go there, and blah, 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 right? We're not much fun to be around from our horse's perspective.
Right.
And so why would they trust us? They just sort of tolerate us until the hour is over and they can go back to their friends. But we
Yeah,
can become that friend if we put a little effort into it. But we can't expect that our horse is automatically going to be our friend without effort just because we feed them and we pay for them.
that's a good point. Because it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. So we think, this is not something I want to put effort into. I'm already paying all this money just to have a horse. And so why do I need to convince my horse that I'm a friend? I bought it. And it's like,
Should
no.
instantly love me. What's the matter with you?
Yeah, horses don't have bank accounts, so they don't get that.
No, they don't get that
No.
at all.
So it's
No.
interesting that you said this horse took 2 months to kind of settle in at your place.
Mhm.
And that's probably because everything in that horse's life changed.
Yeah,
And I go, when a horse comes here for training, they don't know it's temporary, you
that's a
know,
good point.
and a lot of times I'm taking horses from out of state where the owner can't come at all. And, or from, distances where it's not convenient for the owner to come and see their
Right,
horse during training. And so that horse has no idea if I'm the new owner, if they've been sold, if this is permanent, if this is temporary. No knowledge, no control over their life whatsoever. And so I rapidly have to, gain that horse's trust and bond with that horse, even if they're only here temporarily.
right.
Yep. And then I have to show the owner how to do that too.
Yeah, it's like double duty. It's double
Yes.
duty. Yep,
Yes. Because
I agree.
if I do that for the horse and the owner does not, it looks like the horse didn't get trained because
Now say that again. Say that
it
again.
it's so dynamic. Like I
Okay.
found in training, if I don't work with the owner and the horse in
Mm.
conjunction, I would be perfectly happy just to work with horses all day and help horses. But if I don't help the owner understand what I understand and be able to
Good
interact with
point.
their horse in the same way, then the horse it doesn't just transfer because they paid me as a trainer.
That's a good point.
So I go, mostly what I do is I can show as a trainer, I can show the horse where we're going. I can get through the rough patches, I can get through the safety issues. I'm good at convincing horses that we have something beneficial to offer as humans. And so once the horse believes that work can be beneficial, feeling safe, feeling comfortable, and be interesting, then the horse is more open,
Hmm.
recognizes those efforts in the owner, even if the owner is not perfect but has the right intention, right? So that's how I can bring safety between the horse and owner pretty rapidly, is sometimes first working with the horse and moving them along until the horse goes, hey, this is not the worst thing I ever experienced.
Right.
And then show the owner. So even if the owner is still on a learning curve, the horse is now recognizing, oh, the owner is trying to do this, this, and this that I know and I like.
Hmm.
And that's really what a horse trainer can do for a horse and owner. Um, and the trainers that try to make the horses so obedient that they're just push button are also risking that.
Mm.
What is it? Dr. Hancock talked about the dorsal vagal state
Hmm.
of shutdown,
Right.
right? And
Yeah, or one of the horses I'm working with now internalizes everything and got ulcers.
yes,
So
colic,
colic,
ulcers, weight
ulcers, it's not
loss.
weight loss, all of these things. Some of these horses just internalize it instead of being explosive.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's really a problem of expectations
good point.
because I think the owner wants to drop their horse off at the trainers like it's a bicycle and say, fix it, and give it back to me fixed. I know how to ride a bike. And
I
and
always,
horses are more dynamic than that. They
yep,
feel, they think, they have opinions. And so the pressure on the horse trainer is to get this job done without the owner recognizing whether it's appropriate for the horse or not. And,
mm,
and so a lot of horse trainers succumb to these owner expectations. And that's where the horse can be pushed farther than they're ready to go,
right,
right? And with the owner expectations, I try to make it really clear. This is dynamic. I can show you what to do and I can teach your horse where we're going, but the two of you are going to have to do what I
exactly.
did with the horse. It doesn't just automatically transfer without any degree of effort.
I I had a neighbor shoot me an email about a friend who just got a horse from the rescue. Same situation you're talking about. Tried it out the rescue, everything was fine. Brought it home, and the horse is a nightmare and
Unraveled
unraveled. And she doesn't want to do any of the work. She just wants some cowboy to come over and take care of the problem.
and
And
fix
I
her
said,
horse.
I don't know any
Mhm.
people like that in my world.
No, and even the people that go that route, the number one complaint I have is the horse has gone in training, but the cowboy can ride the horse fine. The horse did
Right,
great, graduated training, and they get
right.
the horse home, and the same unraveling goes on all over again.
Exactly.
And so it's like all the training buttons fall off. And so at a certain point, if we're a horse owner, we need to learn about our horse.
Right.
And maybe we get help, but we still have to learn.
We have to we want have to have that want. What is that? What is that? I don't know what it is, seeking that ability to communicate with the horse in the proper way.
Well, a lot of people will say when I ask people their goals with their horse, a high percentage of people will say, I want a relationship with my horse.
Mm,
But
maybe
I don't,
that's it.
but I don't know if somebody says, I basically want a vehicle to go win ribbons at a show. That's a different kind of owner than somebody who says,
I
I want a
agree.
relationship with my horse. And I'm not judging either one of them, but I go, the person who wants more or less a vehicle to go win ribbons and compete, it's going to be an expensive relationship.
Yep.
And the person who actually wants to have the relationship with their horse, there's a lot you can do yourself. It's more of a, DIY situation that's maybe slower if you have competition
Good
goals.
point. Good
And
point.
so that's why some people who compete maybe don't have the patience to go through this learning curve, this part of horsemanship.
Good point.
But
Yeah.
eventually, I find everybody gets dragged into a relationship with a horse, DIY or, you know, DIY, whether they like it or not.
I agree
I
completely.
just go, some people
The
come into it
horse just does
kicking and
that to us.
screaming. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like the horse that's here. The owner was like, "Well, in 3 months, are we going to be able to get on him?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she came for a week visit, and she says, "What about 3 years? Does 3 years?" And I said, "We might be able to do that. Might be able to do that." So it was kind of comical. She finally is getting the message of what this is all about, and the work that needs to be done, and she's on board with it, which is great.
Yeah, and when I can help people learn to read their horse, learn to
Yeah,
speak this language, or at least understand the language of
right.
space and energy and body language and direction and motion, people see for themselves whether
They
the
do.
horse is ready or not. And I go, because as long as we work on our own skills
I
of
agree.
horsemanship, there's still going to be a process that every horse has to go through that I have no control over,
Mhm.
right? So that horse is coming to the table with memories of the past, specific genetics, pluses and minuses, pros and cons, and we're going to pick up here and get started. But we might have to work through memories. We might have to build trust to a higher degree. We might have more physical issues. We might have fewer physical issues. We might have hard to diagnose hidden physical issues that nobody's even
Exactly.
figured out yet,
Right.
right? So the horse is the horse. That's what we have to work with. And I think the people we call horse whisperers, or the masterful horsemen I've met in my lifetime, they just recognize the most subtle version of the horse's communication
I
and
agree.
can adapt so fast that they're never inadvertently increasing fear or resistance in the
Mhm.
process of training the horse. That's what makes a really masterful person. But that person is very, I got to say, 100% of the time humble and is there for the benefit of the horse.
Yeah,
100%. And
that's a
they
good
have no
point.
agenda of their own on how fast they want the horse to get this. That's not a
Right.
true horse whisperer or a horse master. True horse master doesn't have a time frame because it depends.
It depends.
It depends.
The best teachers say it depends.
I know. So frustrating.
It's so frustrating.
But a huge part of horse training depends on the horse, how the horse receives the learning,
The information, yeah.
the
Are they
information.
at that point they can hear it, you
And
know?
can they process it? And then
Mhm.
can they do it? And then can they do it really well? Like there's a lot of steps in there for the horse's learning curve.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and we assume because they're big enough for us to sit on that they just figure things out. And I think that was hundreds of years of how we dealt with horses.
Mhm.
But even back in, what was it, 400 BC, the book written by Xenophon talks about how horses can learn. That's like the first known book
Wow.
on horse training ever written. And he was a Greek prince and training horses for war and wrote this book about recognizing things with horses and how we could work with horses better way back in 400 BCE. It's
Wow.
crazy. I know. So I guess that's a good note to wrap it up on. I think
Yes.
we've gone long today, but when we learn to read horses, it's not a surprise that our horse needs some time to adapt if we're changing humans, especially changing herd members, especially. So if our horse is going somewhere without a familiar herd member, we really shouldn't be surprised that our horse is nervous and afraid.
Yeah, I
We would
agree.
be too,
Right.
right? Going to a new school or a new church or a new neighborhood or moving to a new state. It's like everybody's a bit nervous until they get the lay of the land and meet a few friends. And the
Yes.
horses are no different. So thanks for joining us,
Thanks.
everybody. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Horse Geeks podcast.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.